And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Bit rusty, sorry, boys.
All good. We thought it was all good last week. We were here and we were celebrating two great results, and then the week happened. Isn't it just like how a week generally goes in the life of anybody? Welcome to Toronto Till I Die, the July 4th edition. So happy USA Day to any of our American listeners enjoying the day off. Light off some fireworks, barbecue some stuff. We did that on Friday. So you're with Mike Newell, Jeffrey P. Nesker, and Michael Singh are joining you as well. Lots to talk about this week. So I won't waste too much time. But boys, how was your long weekend? We're here in Canada. We enjoyed our Canada Day. How did you guys enjoy the weekend?
Got to go to the country, get some fresh country air. Got to come back, get a nice breeze at BMO, and that was about the only thing that was good about BMO on Saturday. So yeah, I mean, nice breeze, terrible football. How about you, Mikey Singh?
Yeah, no, I first game this year, I actually took in a game from the stands.
He came off from his mantle on high to sit with us, the plebes.
Get out of here. So since probably about 2009, 2010, I actually have season tickets for TFC, but I split them with a couple different people. So there's about 4 or 5 games that I try to get out to from the stands each year. I haven't been able to do that the last couple of years, obviously with pandemic and other things that are just going on. So it was just nice to just sit back and take in a game from the stands, and it's a lot different because I mean, it was like a subtle reminder just how passionate, TFC fans are. And I felt like heading into Saturday's match against Seattle, there was a real buzz around the team, around that game. We know that Crescito and Insigne wasn't going to be playing, but I started to see Insigne jerseys pop up left, right, and center. I saw some.
Oh my God. At 200 a pop, man, they were selling them like wildfire. Yeah.
They are full on the Insigne brand train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did anybody else catch that scarf that just says Lorenzo Insigne on one side of it?
But it's blue.
Was it blue? I mean, I was
out there.
Okay. I saw one that looked like a season ticket holder's scarf, except for the fact that the team seems to be Lorenzo Insigne FC now. So yeah. But they made a killing on those jerseys at $2 a pop. That's for sure. And it was like the concert where everybody's buying the. Well, it's like the concert where everybody's buying the band T-shirt and then wearing it at the concert. Like there were so many people wearing their brand new Insigne shirts at the game. It was pretty interesting.
Well, that was the first day they were available, so everybody was jumping on the train early. But as you guys mentioned, there was an actual game on Saturday, and it was actually not that good. As TFC dropped 2 results this week, 1 to Columbus and 1 to Seattle, shipping 4 goals and only scoring 1. So we'll talk a little bit about that. There's some news that actually just dropped within the last kind of like hour that we'll talk about off the top. And then, we'll get into the Michael Singh notebook this week as Mr. Singh is back from attending the Insigne press conference last Monday. That's why he wasn't on the show last week. And then we'll get into a bit of a preview of San Jose TFC this weekend, which might be Insigne's first game. We'll see how that goes. And then, of course, we'll go through our 3 burning questions a week. You guys hit us with some really great questions
as always
this week. But quickly, guys, let's just recap the 2 losses this past week, 1 against Columbus and 1 against Seattle. I couldn't go to the game on Wednesday night. I was here working the Forge game. But from all accounts, from what I watched and the stats, a game TFC statistically probably should have won, but somehow didn't. So I'd love to get you guys just really quickly your thoughts on the Columbus game.
I mean, it's it's just hilarious that the guy that did it was a former TFC Academy product, right? Like we're talking about the kids underperforming on the field, and then a former kid comes in and overperforms on the field. It seems weirdly fitting in some macabre way. That was my initial takeaway. It's difficult to separate the Columbus game at this point because the Seattle one was just so damn disappointing. I thought, like the stats bear out, the Columbus game was a battle, and it could have tilted in either direction, even though TFC were pretty listless at the final analysis. But that Seattle game just put such a bad taste in my mouth, and I think the fandom's mouth that that's the one that people are harping on, as evidenced by the Tunnel Club. What was it yesterday afternoon? That seems to be the one that's really, really getting people tied up in a knot.
And I actually thought that the games were kind of similar, where TFC had a lot of possession, I believe, in both games, but they never really threatened too much either game, whether it was Columbus or Seattle. I think the best chance was on Saturday, I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but on Saturday when Jesus and Paz linked up and Paz almost, towed it past the keeper in the middle of the park there. Like, that was probably their best chance they created from both games. That includes Jesus Jimenez's goal. So it's different because, a lot of times we're talking about TFC breakdowns defensively. We're talking about them being unable to keep the ball the way that they would like, but now we're talking about them unable to break down a low block in the final third. And it's another, I guess, issue that the team's kind of navigating towards. And to be honest, I'm not too worried about it because they have someone who's waiting in the wings that thrives in breaking down low blocks and is a game changer when it comes to that stuff. So when you throw a guy like Lorenzo Insigne on the pitch in either of those games, I believe he has the potential to make the difference when teams are sitting back. So I'm not too concerned about it. It stings a little bit because those were both winnable games, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the Columbus result, maybe more than the Seattle result, is probably disappointing only because and hopefully we'll get into the stats part. We're going to get into some breaking news in the first segment. We'll see if we have time to talk about it in a bit more depth. But, if you look at the stats for both games, Toronto FC statistically dominate the game, right? They double up in possession. They double up in the number of passes. They actually create more shots on goal, right? Like they actually, even from an XG perspective, it's not that bad, right? Compared to how we sort of started off the year. And yet still finding a way to lose games. And I think that's the frustrating part for me personally, because I'm seeing the same things, Mike, you're talking about, right? Like, I'm seeing the progression of the ball. I'm seeing them being able to possess the ball and start to create things. But Saturday was a sort of lesson in why possession sometimes isn't always the letter of the law.
Very well put.
Because you can pass the ball a million times up the side to the 18-yard box. But if you can't penetrate, and you can't really create those chances, then it kind of becomes an exercise. It just becomes a passing exercise. And a
way to tire yourself out, and considering the fixture congestion. Yeah,
exactly. And we talked about it on the Tunnel Club, right? You have these passing charts, and in the wins that Toronto FC have had, they've been much wider. They've been a lot more dynamic. They've been able to hit on the counter a lot more. Whereas in these sort of games where they plod to have a lot of possession but can't break blocks down, you could just see a million passes in the middle of the park and nothing penetrates. So, that's, I think, where some of that frustration comes from, because I think people are seeing that they have the ability to have that attack, but they just want to see that end product. And more times than not, it's just not coming off.
So can I ask something there, Mike? Why do you think they're struggling so much, in your opinion, or in Jeff, your opinion, to create chances and break down a low block in the final third? Like, what are you guys seeing out there?
Jeff, you can go first.
Too fancy. I mean, I've got a crib sheet of chicken scratch here, and too fancy. I've got triple underlined. It seems like they're trying to do too much when there's an easier outlet. I think of the idiom, like, good things happen when you shoot the ball at the net, right? The goalkeeper could cough up a rebound for an easy tap.
That's an old hockey term right there.
They're trying to do too much. You see it in all the attacks that instead of going for maybe a lower percentage shot, they're looking for that like perfect through ball or that perfect, cross, and it's just not connecting. That's what I saw.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Mike. To me, I think it's right now in those games where they have a lot of that ball, they're very narrow, right? Those wingbacks are not as wide as you probably hope they would be. And that's where the width comes when you set up the way that Bob's kind of setting up. When you're trying to play those two up top with Io and Jimenez, they kind of sometimes want to drop in some of the same spaces. What you end up in a situation is, and you can see it in some of the passing maps where you can see between Michael Bradley, Jonathan Osorio, Alejandro Pozuelo, and Jimenez specifically, they're very close together. And it becomes a little bit easier to defend them when they're so compact and you don't feel like you have a threat out wide, whether it be from Kosi Thompson or from Luca Petrasso. And you're right. Maybe Lorenzo Insigne is the difference there, where he can come in and take so much attention away from other people. It opens up space if he's able to maybe stick a little bit wider. But I also think that he's going to have the tendency to want to cut in on his right foot and come inside. So we'll see how that works. But that's kind of what I'm seeing, both just with my eyes, but also from a statistical point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think Axis makes a great point, just to interrupt for 1 second. It could be as simple as this. Like, they give up the first goal way too early all the time. We're talking about a team that has, a clean sheet record that's abysmal. They're always chasing the game. That changes game states, right? They're never, as much as we'd like to think that they're on the front foot, when you're chasing a game perpetually, you have to adjust your tactics because you don't want to ship 2 more goals, right? So there's an emphasis on defensive responsibility that we know is kind of their weak point. Anyway, that I just think that it can be simplified maybe to just that. You keep conceding in the first 15 minutes, you're never really owning the game states. You're perpetually on the back foot trying to avoid making a fool out of yourself. Yeah,
and statistically, I sort of dug into the numbers ahead of the Tunnel Club yesterday and look, TFC, the 2 most common times TFC give away goals are within the first 15 minutes and the first 15 minutes after the second half starts. It's like a disproportionate, like it's really high. So there's clearly something there about starting, right? Like starting games and starting halves where they're just not locked in as a team defensively.
Yeah, no, I think all of those are definitely factors. What I'm also seeing out there is there's a bit of a disconnect with the way the team wants to play. I think Bob Bradley, the way he sets up his side typically, and we saw this in the Seattle game, the side that likes to play typically quickly through the middle of the park. When they started the Seattle match, you talk about TFC playing really narrow. Do you know who their right winger was in that game?
No, I'm trying to remember.
Versus Seattle, I'm trying to remember.
Seattle, but in the first half,
where they were kind of playing Io a little bit, like kind of wide. They were switching at times, as I remember.
Yeah, see, that's perfect epitome of what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Their right winger was actually technically Alejandro Pozuelo, and
I think we just don't want to ever see him on the right winger, so we were like, nope, it's not happening. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's the way they initially started the match, and the way that pause works, as we all know, he drifts inside.
Well, he was inside for most of the game.
He was inside for most of the game, which is why actually in the second half, TFC made a change and brought off Io, brought on DeAndre Curtin, shift to more of a 4-2-3-1, and allowed Paz to play as a number 10, because honestly, he was doing that anyways, where he kind of free roams all around the pitch. So for me, there was a bit of a disconnect there, because in Bob Bradley's system, you see Kosi on the right-hand side with a lot of space in front of him, but he also, when he picks up the ball, he's not really that threat driving forward that you need out of attacking fullback in this system. And B, there wasn't much support around him when he did pick up the ball. So there was kind of the right side was a little bit dead for TFC. And that's actually how, if you go look back at the tape, that's how Seattle scored the first goal. It was one switch over the top from their right to our right-hand side, beat Salcedo, obviously, and squared the pass in. So there was a lot of disconnect there, I think, in Toronto FC's build-up play. And the other thing is they don't have a lot of runners making runs off the ball. There's not much movement with Toronto FC. There's a lot of players who like to have the ball at the feet, right? Yeah. So you have Ozo in there, you have Paz, you have Jesus Jimenez. He likes to come short and collect the ball. Ayo isn't as mobile as we've seen from Ayo Akinola in the past. There's just a little bit of too much disconnect there for me with the team right now moving forward. And hopefully Lorenzo Insigne can just be that extra element that they need to kind of smoothen things up, because I'm just seeing a lot of different ideas, I guess, throughout the game.
Yeah, and I think that speaks again to what we've talked about on this podcast and the Town Club before, just in terms of Alejandro Pozuelo's fit in this team, right? Like, does he fit really what we want to do going forward? Like, I get the arguments that he is a great player. He you can see it, right? You see it every game. Like you see those flashes, but just being great sometimes isn't enough if you don't fit in the system. Because if you don't fit in the system, your greatness gets negated by the fact that, yeah, you are leaving Kosi Thompson on an island sometimes defensively, right? Especially when we're asking him to push forward and be that wide player on an overlap, right? So, there are some questions here that need to be answered both in this window and I think in the offseason in terms of, how are we moving forward with the way that we want to play? And that kind of gets into this first segment here, which is a little bit of a change, Mike, probably from the run sheet that you have. But there is news out there that just dropped. I don't know how relevant it is, or how real it is, but the idea that Carlos Salcedo might be being shopped by Toronto FC. As a lot of people know, he's currently back in Mexico right now with family. There is apparently a family illness or something of that nature. I don't want to speculate or spend time speculating on that. If he's got obviously issues with his family, we just wish him the best and wish his family the best. But it does open the question that, if the club is looking to move him or if he has requested a move for this reason, where does that leave Toronto FC in terms of this? I'm calling it a rebuild. Other people may not call it that, but where are we left in this process, especially as he has been here for less than 6 months almost?
I guess, yeah, I'll start. I'll fill some of the blanks there. I did see the article. I don't put too much weight into that article. I don't think it's coming from, or it's phrased the right way. TFC aren't, from what I've been told, TFC are not actively shopping Carlos Salcedo. The way the article is written makes it seem like TFC are going to team, trying to find a way out for Salcedo.
Yeah, a suitor. Yeah, of course.
That's not what's happening. As Mike said, without speculating too much, we'll go off by what Bob Bradley said. There's family emergency with Salcedo. He has been back to Mexico a couple of times. He just gave birth to, him and his wife there just gave birth to their newborn. And I just hope everything is okay in that regard. He also has another young son. So we just hope that everything is okay in that regard. And one thing is Salcedo, as we've known, is he's a very family-oriented person. And I believe that his family is in Mexico right now while he's in Toronto, which is very tough just from a personal standpoint, being away from especially such a young family and everything like that. So with the way that things might unfold here, we'll see how it goes. But it's a situation that's literally happening within the last little bit. It's not like this is something that's been brewing. And I think the article kind of phrases it in a little bit of a wrong way, that TFC are actively trying to get out of Salcedo. That's not the case. So we'll see kind of how this situation plays out. But it is certainly possible that by the end of this window, Salcedo does move on from Toronto FC for what I would say personal reasons.
Yeah. Now, we had a question we were discussing and we wanted to ask you before if he goes, do we get the DP spot back, or does that stay used until next year?
No, you would get a designated player spot if Salcedo is transferred out of Major League Soccer.
But does the cap hit still stay on the or does that come back off the cap?
Like his salary cap hit.
Yeah, like his salary cap hit on a DP contract.
It would be prorated, I believe. I'm not like an expert on this matter anymore.
Yeah.
But if you bring in a DP in the summer, instead of it counting at 612, 500, it's half of that. So I'm assuming that it would cost maybe half of his DP contract. But I'm not an expert when it comes to that regard. But
no one is.
The DP spot for sure would be open.
Okay. Maybe I'll hold on that because there's some questions in the three burning questions that sort of pertain to transfer stuff, as this time of year will always do. But it came up in the Tunnel Club yesterday. I'll sort of just bring it up here, just get your guys' thoughts on this. Look, a lot of people kind of pointed the finger at Carlos Salcedo for the first goal because he did get beat.
He got beat
on the wing. Which again may speak to how Toronto FC are defending as a team right now, because why is he needing to be that wide when defending? But right now, going into now we're 18 games into the season, are we starting to get enough body of information from Carlos Salcedo to say, like, is this actually something that is working for the team? I'm not talking about whether he's worthy of a DP slot, right? Like that is subjective to every team, right? Because it depends on what every team values. But is this working out for Toronto FC in terms of what they had hoped to get from him, both from on-field perspective, but also from a leadership perspective off the field? Is this sort of working out right now? And I'll start with Jeff, and we'll go from there.
I think, the first thing on my notes is blaming the kids wholesale is the easy answer. I think at this point, talking about an individual player, even Pozuelo at this point, is kind of not the entire story, because there's such failing in terms of systems, in terms of on-field performance, and leaving people exposed and stuff like that. Like, sure, it wasn't pretty, and I tweeted out a rather snide, that's our DP defender comment after I watched him get smoked, just like a pylon. And I'll own that, but at the end of the day, in the sober second thought, in the cold light of day, I don't know if you can make that assessment, right? Like, we've played our first choice center back pairs. How many times? 3 times? Like, you can count it on one hand, right? And then you've got the kids to deal with, and you've got the fullback situation. So no, I don't know if we can give him a report card grade. Certainly, judging from some of the comments that I'm looking at in the chat, people would like to show him the door and replace him with, the mystical TAM center back that we'll get for $0 that is going to come in and Victor Vasquez. Yeah, exactly. If we want red cards, let me tell you, let's get some Daniil Henry in there. I don't know. Look, we were all so high on Carlos Salcedo when he first showed up, because he's a silky player. He's got silky skills. He commands a certain respect on the pitch. He's got panache. He's a vocal guy, but he's been exposed far too often. And I don't know. This is going to be my answer for so many of these questions. I just don't know anymore, because, like you said on the Tunnel Club, it's been such a roller coaster ride with this squad. You get a week of positivity and then a week of like existential crisis negativity, right? So, does it mean his position's safe? Absolutely not. As we like to say very often, this is a results-based business, and we're not getting results. But, to lose a player 6 months into his tenure, is always is always not ideal, right?
Yeah, it's been really stop and start this season for Salcedo is the one thing I'll say. Mm-hmm. There's obviously the couple of suspensions he picked up early in the year, and then he got COVID, and then of course he had the family emergency. So he's played with so many different center back pairings. There hasn't really been too much consistency. He's playing with the kids. There's a lot of reasons. Kids, by the way, who are not natural fullbacks. So let's really emphasize that point home.
Must be emphasized.
It's something.
Yes.
Sometimes we glance over that. Is he the best center back on Toronto FC? I think he's easily, in my opinion, the best center back on Toronto FC. that being said, there's always the asterisk with the DP contract status. Is he worth being a designated player? My opinion, absolutely not. Is he what Toronto FC expected when they went out and got him? I guess before I answer that question, again, emphasize the reason why TFC got Carlos Salcedo in the first place was to get out of Jefferson.
That was the main reason.
My guy. Right? That was the main reason. Yep.
And then Salcedo obviously filled a need that they needed at the back. But the designated player tag was always going to be tough to live up to, especially as a defender overall in just Major League Soccer. Is he a bad player?
100%.
No. Has he lived up to expectations? Had a rough go in sort of a foreign country to him? Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. There was a stretch there about 2 weeks ago where he was starting to kind of raise his game. I asked Bob Bradley about it. He actually agreed that Salcedo had been a lot better. And then, of course, the family emergency happened. So
it's been
a bunch of bad breaks, I think, for Salcedo. But that being said, let's say hypothetically the team does end up freeing up a DP spot. I don't think they'll be too upset about that aspect of it.
Interesting, because I feel it's kind of too early to give up on this Salcedo thing. I know there's a lot.
They may not have a choice. You know what I mean?
They may not have a choice. That is 100%. That might just be that choice might be taken out of their hands. And again, you just have to respect it if that's the case. But if it's not, and he still wants to be here, then I think you write him out. And I know that's not the popular sentiment within TFC right now, Land. But I think you really do want to figure out what you have here, because I think there is a very good center back who can be very, very useful to this team going forward, right? Not just from a defending. So first of all, he's been isolated and exposed so many times by the team around him. Defensively, right? Like I think we've mentioned it on the podcast before. This team defensively is just not good, right? And they do leave their defenders really exposed at times. And there's some times where I do feel bad for the defenders because I know they're going to get slack from the fans, but it really isn't fully their fault because they're put in I don't want to say an impossible position, but they're put in a very difficult position, a very defensively difficult position. And in the end of the day, when the ball goes in, it's the goalkeeper and the center back that always gets looked at as the why didn't you stop that? But in fact, there were several things ahead of that play that actually caused that goal, but we just don't remember them, right? So I really think it would be early to jettison the Carlos Salcedo experience, DP tag and all, right? Like I don't think it's a bad thing in MLS to necessarily spend your DP money on a center back if that's going to make you better, because look, in this league, defenses win you MLS Cups, right? Like
100%.
Teams that keep the ball out of the net win MLS Cups, right? And that's just a reality of how this league still runs.
Mike, what if I told you Carlos Salcedo was the highest paid defender in Major League Soccer?
Well, yeah,
Do you believe he's living up to that tag?
No, of course not. No,
he's the highest paid defender in Major League Soccer.
Well, I know that, but I mean, at the same time, I think you still got to figure that out, right? Not even 6 months. We're really just going to toss that away. I mean, Jefferson Salcedo is a special case, and that was something completely different outside of the field of play. I think that if you are going to pay him that money, you got to at least give him a year to figure it out, right? A lot of players that come in from other countries to MLS, it takes them time to adapt. Now, I know he's played in the league before, but he needs some time to adapt.
The league is entirely different than when he played in it before. And also, listen, the team, we're all at the point, at least we should be at the point where this year is a write-off. Like, it is what it is. Enjoy the Canadian Championship. Maybe we sneak into a playoff spot. Is Lorenzo going to do cool tricks? Am I going to buy the T-shirt, right? Like, that should be the goal of this year. So why are we saying, no, you haven't made the grade based upon 6 months? Again, this could be entirely out of our decision-making process. This could be simply adjusting for a player's need to move for personal human reasons. And if so be it, right? It's unfortunate. And again, you look at the last couple years, players come in for 6 months now. Like we had Kamar Lawrence for a cup of coffee. We had Salcedo for a cup of Salcedo, whatever his name is, Twinkle Toes mixed step overs for a cup of coffee. And now we're going to have, our DP center back for a cup of coffee. And that doesn't look very well. The optics of that are terrible, despite, each one having its own individual.
Well, it looks like old right? Like,
it does. It feels like old TFC, right?
Well, let's emphasize that latter point you made there, Jeff. Just again, if Carlos Salcedo leaves, it's not because of his performance on the pitch.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I think that's
and again, just to be the clown prince of chaos, right? I don't even want to go there because I don't want to. You know what? Forget I said anything, because this is, a family emergency is. I'm not going to even.
Oh, I think I know where you're going.
You can't speculate.
You can't speculate. Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't want to. I don't. Save that for 4 pints in, if anything. But like,
fair enough.
It is. If this year is about figuring out what we've got in every respect, figuring out who works well together, figuring out which one of the kids have a future with us or a future elsewhere or no future, then we've got, that has to be an all or nothing, an all for one kind of situation, right? Like there should be no negative passes to based on performance, because we're figuring this stuff out, at least with respect to that, But I do think that there will come a time where it gets figured out and then moves have to be made.
Yeah. No, that's fair. The last thing I guess I'll say on this is that if this was not take DP tag out of it, I think you're there, Jeff, where, TFC would love to be patient with Carlos Salcedo.
That's very, very fair.
And
that's
they would.
very fair.
It's just a matter of, can that DP spot be better spent elsewhere? And my opinion through this 6 months, it might be too early, but I think it's unconvincingly a yes when you hear about some of the other names that the team and MLS in general is being linked with. So yeah, I think for me personally, I think it's 100%. I think that DP spot could be better spent elsewhere.
Okay, then hang on to that thought because that comes up in our 3 burning questions. So just hang on to that thought, Mr. Singh. Let's jump into the Michael Singh notebook because it's fun time for everybody, and part of the 3 burning questions is basically Michael Singh, tell us everything. It's a general question, but I know you gotta save some for the paid content. So, but let's just go to notebooks. You were at training last week. Obviously 2 matches in the week. We saw who ended up playing, but were there any interesting notes that came out of training? Things that you saw Criscito's first steps onto the training pitch. You saw Insigne's first steps onto the training pitch. How did that go for those guys?
Yeah, no, that was probably the most interesting part of the week, because that's obviously the story that everybody's been keeping their eye on. It started with the, I guess, Lorenzo Insigne press conference last Monday, which was cool.
That jacket.
Yeah.
Can you give me that jacket, man? Like,
Yeah.
You got the hook up?
Why isn't Ovo making that jacket? Like, I don't want another hoodie. I want that damn jacket, man. Put an owl inside.
Just please don't say Ovo.
What is it?
Say Ovo.
What is it? I don't know.
OVO.
I've only ever read it.
OVO.
OVO? October's very... I know what it stands for. October's very own.
That's too good.
OVO? Whatever.
It is OVO. It is OVO.
Uh-huh.
Your hip hop lesson for the day, everybody.
Oh, we're calling Drake hip hop now. Am I?
Well,
I don't know.
for now.
All right.
But I was actually on MLS Twitter Spaces last week after the press conference, and that's what Tom Bogert asked me about, was Insigne's outfit. I'm like, man, honestly, the diamond studs that he was wearing in his ears are probably worth more than I've made in my entire career so far.
Entire salary cap for the Houston Dynamo.
Yeah, when when he came off the plane in his all Celine jumpsuit, I was like, okay, the bar has been set, Lorenzo Insigne. And that's the thing about Lorenzo, and we've seen it throughout this past week, is that he does have that it factor, that star power.
Sure.
He has the ability to create that buzz around BMO Field, and we've even seen that buzz on training. Friday was his first time at the BMO training grounds as a Toronto FC player officially. He was in his training kit and all, as you guys have all seen the pictures that we got to take on social media. And what was particularly cool was there was a section of fans that actually showed up to the training ground.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. Yeah.
And as Crescito walked out, it was a lot of people were Genoa fans. Actually, I'm sure there were some Inebriati members and whatnot there too. But they started chanting for Crescito, which is, at the training ground. That's pretty surreal. So you can tell there's that buzz that's coming back to this team. And Insigne was he's short. Like I'm personally pretty short. Like I think I'm like 5'6", let's say. Maybe
taller than
5'7" on a good day.
Yeah, I think you're 5. Yeah,
get the lifts.
All
right. I don't think so. But he's like 2 inches shorter than me. So he's definitely a smaller guy, but he definitely has that it star factor. So
yeah. Well, they only make those blazers in child sizes, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was probably the coolest part, or the biggest part about this past week. And yeah, nothing really else to add aside from TFC do look like they're getting healthier, which is nice.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is nice. This is, it moves the needle. Like Insigne's signing was as much of a business decision as it was a footballing decision. And on the business front, it's already paying dividends, right? Like we saw the scarves, we saw the shirts. There were at least 5,000 people at the game that thought it was Insigne's debut on Saturday and were pretty upset that he only got trotted out for like 15 seconds during halftime. July 9th is going to be lit. I mean, we still haven't even mentioned, whether we think he's even going to play. A lot of people in the chat are talking about, what's up with the calf injury that precluded his participation in some of the marquee matches on his way out of Napoli. We don't necessarily need to get into that. And that's positive. That means that TFC can sustain itself, at least, in a fiscal way, as we work through the kinks of what's driving us all crazy as hardcore super supporters. That's entirely positive. Bringing out new fans. Previously TFC adverse people, that are hardcore soccer heads back into the fold is wonderful news for this club. It's wonderful because we love to spend money, and this brings money. Richard, just buy me the OVO hoodie instead of making fun of me, dude.
No, Richard, I don't know, man. Check your bank account before you buy that hoodie, because
It's a hell of a lot of money.
It is not
but
cheap.
I mean, that's super positive to me, and I love that. I love that before he's even set foot on the Sisgrass, or it's not Sisgrass. Yeah, it is Sisgrass, or maybe it's a different one. But regardless, before he steps on the pitch at BMO, he's already paying dividends. And that's what you want out of a guy that you break the bank for. You know what I mean? There's tangible excitement in the city, et cetera, ad infinitum. That's great.
Yeah, I think the signing of Lorenzo Insigne and Bill Manning mentioned it on the press conference when they announced his signing. This is as much a business decision as it is a footballing one, right? Like this is about driving revenue and getting people back in the gates. I know super fans hate talking about that and supporters hate talking about the money side of things, but that is important. The
club can't exist on our one beer, our
right?
one beer split between 8 people and the one poutine that we buy every 6 months,
so
right?
from that perspective, I get that. I can also understand some who are kind of rolling their eyes at the amount of Lorenzo Insigne content that is coming out right now. And especially I know, so I'm kind of like whatever, but because I'm not out there buying a Familia t-shirt or anything like that. But I get it, right? I get people being excited and wanting to get the stuff. But I'm not necessarily a stuff guy. Says the guy with the zip up in the background. But I can also understand that people are just like, I just want to see him on the pitch, just get him on the pitch, and I want to see him play, right? So completely understand that from that perspective. Mike, can I just, from the press conference perspective, if you don't mind me asking, what were your impressions of him while he was answering some of the questions? I know some people were like, some of the Toronto media questions were ridiculous. I don't think they were that bad. But what were your sort of impressions on him in terms of how he answered, the way that he sort of was carrying himself and seeing this, as he called it, and as it's called in the football world, project?
Yeah, I thought he said all the right things. I've been through a bunch of those pressers already, and it's pretty standard. There's never really anything spicy that gets thrown out in an environment like that. I'm not sure what people were expecting.
Yeah, exactly.
To ask, or what questions were missed there. I thought all the standard questions in every press conference when a signing like this comes down was asked. He seems like he was bought into the project and understands that it is going to be a bit of a rebuild. And he said, sure, he didn't come here for money, but like, come on, like he said for family's well-being.
Say money in a different way. But like, who's gonna who would, if somebody's gonna back up the Brinks truck for you to move to job, you're going in a heartbeat. You're going before you even hear the first beep of the backup sound on the truck.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the definition of a dog and pony show. You bring him out, he smiles for the camera, you ask him the same questions that have been written for hundreds of years at this point, because like the man said through his interpreter, he wants us to love him for what he does on the pitch. Not that and this and that, and we haven't seen it yet. So we're in a holding pattern with the Lorenzo Insigne experience, and there are tons of unanswered questions, but the only way they get answered is on that field of play. So, bring on July the 9th.
And just my last question on this whole Insigne experience segment here is just, which it didn't really intend it to be a whole Insigne segment because we've done that already, but here we are. Does he play July 9th? Because there is that sort of nagging little calf thing that's hanging in the background. Or is it more of a situation where we may see him on the bench, and if he can get on for a couple of minutes, he gets on for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say a couple things I'll add. First, when we asked Bob Bradley last week, I believe it was Friday, he said that they're going to be cautious with him as he is still working his way back from that injury, especially when you make this type of investment in a player. So we did start it with that. And that's why Insigne wasn't really training fully on Friday. He was training on his own indoors and doing whatever gym work, whatever it was he needed to do. But with the way that the team is promoting this, it does seem like it would be on the verge of making some sort of appearance or feature on Saturday. This upcoming week will honestly be telling when I get back to training probably tomorrow. And see whether or not he is back there out on the pitch. Because if he is there on the pitch on Tuesday, there's a good chance, that all things considered, that he does make his TFC debut on July 9th along with Cresciuto.
Yeah, there'll be a riot if he doesn't at least get trotted out for 15 minutes or so at the end of the game. People are expecting it.
Sure. I personally do not care. Like if he's not fit, don't play him, right? Like there's no need to rush him out. I get the promotional hype behind it, and we just had a conversation just about the business of the signing. But the business of the signing kind of gets tanked if he goes out there for 50 minutes and that calf goes kablooey and he's done for the season, or he's done for a period of time.
Explain it to Section 112 with the crying children that wanted to see Insigne.
Hey,
right?
Look, I get it.
It's a horrible. It's a catch-22, but yeah.
No,
yeah.
I 100% understand that. But from a look, he signed until 2020. Like he signed until the next World Cup, right? So why are we rushing this now? If it's got to take an extra week, it sucks. I get it for the people who are coming July 9th. 100%, because apparently it is as sold out as we've been in a while, or pretty close to sold out. But you'll get another chance to see him, right? Like I would rather him be fit, wait. Even if it takes 2 or 3 games and he has to sit and be fit, do that. Like, don't worry. Like if the fan, like and Bob Riley does not strike me as the kind of guy who's going to really care about whether or not it's sold out and people are there to see Insigne. If he's not fit, he's not playing, and that should be, to me, that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I know that there's an enormous amount of pressure to trot out the new hotness, and that pressure can't be waved away, unfortunately. And considering the state of the team this year and their desire to get back into relevancy. Aside from winning, it's bringing out the new hot signing, and you're only going to get a few chances with the casuals before they lose interest. You're only going to fool me once, right? The people that bought tickets on July 9th are not going to be so eager to buy tickets on July 12th or whatever the case may be if they don't get to see their Lorenzo sighting, right? So it is a law of diminishing returns, regardless of the fact that these are human beings we're talking about, and you don't want him to go out there and pop his knee and then be out for the rest of the season. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. That's just a bullet you have to bite. The main point, I think I agree with Mike, is if he's healthy, trot him out. If there's any sort of sign that he's not 100% fit and able to play, then don't even risk. You're investing over 70, 75, 80 million dollars in this asset. Yeah. You're not risking it over rushing his debut. That doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. The tickets are sold no matter whether he plays or not. So the tickets are sold. So, and then if anything, it just pushes it to another home game where they can sell out another game. So from a business perspective, there you go. Last question in regards to the notebook, Mike. We get it every week. The transfer window, for everybody who is asking, it opens on Thursday, officially, and it runs to the 8th. So we have a month, and you're going to ask every single week. So we'll kind of ask every single week about transfers. I didn't see anything sort of new coming out on the pipe in regards to transfers. Anything, Mike, you're hearing that you can sort of talk about in terms of potential who else might be coming in during the window? Yeah,
for sure. I'll throw out some stuff out there. The first thing, let me address Richie Laryea. I think it's probably fallen off a little bit based on the price it would have taken to acquire him, as well as there are other offers that TFC are now competing with when it comes to Richie Laryea. So that part's a little dicey there, and I think it's cooled off on that front. I know there was interest from both parties in potentially making that happen, but I don't think it's going to happen.
We did promise something about Bernardeschi.
The trade window opens on July 7th. And I believe TFC would be active in that window. It's not just the transfer market, right? It's also the trade window. And I believe TFC would be active in some regard in that window. And then, Federico Bernardeschi is the guy's name who Jeff butchered.
I wasn't going to say anything, Jeff. I was going to let it go. Let someone else kill you in the comments.
Whatever. It's a theme today. I'm mispronouncing everything.
I didn't know he turned Romanian all of a sudden.
Yeah, whatever.
So what I'll say on Bernardeschi is that I don't know where the rumor started, to be honest with you, but what I've been told is the interest from Toronto FC is very much real in Bernardeschi. Italian. Of course, played for Juventus most recently, primarily as a right winger, but he's actually been moved all around sort of the midfield. And I can see him kind of slotting in pretty seamlessly on the right-hand side on this roster. And some other transactions would have to take place in order for Bernardeschi to join Toronto FC officially. So, like I said, the interest is very, very much real from Toronto FC, but there are still some hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, because he's on a free, right? Like he's not
he's
with
out of
Juventus
contract
anymore. Yeah, okay. Do you know if there's interest from him to come to TFC?
I would say the interest is somewhat mutual. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of offers, as we've seen in the past, that TFC would be competing with, but how far along they've gotten shows me that there's interest from both parties.
Wow, that's some breaking news, and helps us out in a very weak right side of the pitch. So, yeah.
And
go
ahead, Jeff.
No. I was forming a question as I was saying it, so you might as well.
No, it was just more on that because this was also asked throughout the week in terms of 3 burning questions. So I've kind of amalgamated them all into one, as specifically around Junior Hoylett. I know that name has been bandied around a little bit. Again, we never got anything solid, so I don't know if there's any real punch to that. But is there any update there on the potential Junior? Obviously, if you're talking about Bernardeschi, like Junior wouldn't make a ton of sense, but is that still something that TFC are open to?
Junior Hoylett?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, and I haven't really gotten much information on that actually recently. But I believe there would still be interest in making that move happen based on what I was told previously. We'll kind of see how that works out. There's a lot of, what I'll say is, like, these past 2 weeks, it seems like things have kind of taken a little bit of a turn from where they were maybe projecting to kind of reach and kind of trend towards. That's what happens in the transfer market in soccer and everything. So we'll see kind of how that situation plays out. But like I said, there was mutual interest from both parties. And if the numbers and figures and everything works out in that regard, and Hoylett does have the ambition of coming home at this point of his career before the World Cup, then yeah, something could definitely get worked out in that regard.
Okay. Love it.
All right.
Love to hear it. Yeah.
So Jeff, we're keeping Jeff happy there. All right. In terms of the Hoylett watch, maybe we'll even start a clock even for that.
I might.
All right. Let's move on here. Just over to a quick preview of aforementioned July 9th game against San Jose. It's not really a 6-pointer because obviously they're in the West and we're in the East.
Yeah.
But kind of a 6-pointer in regards to the overall standings because we're only we're on wins, we're ahead of them, but we're actually tied on points at 18. And this is the team that has conceded more goals than we have. The only team in MLS who has conceded more goals. One, by the way. And actually, again, digging into the numbers.
They all count.
Digging into the numbers a little bit, their actually goals conceded has slowed down since they made their coaching change. So actually, there's based on numbers, we'll probably actually pass them unless we change our sort of defensive ways. But I mean, this has got to be looked at as 3 points, right? Like this has got to be a 3-pointer for TFC, considering you're playing a team that defensively is probably worse than you are, which is hard to say these days.
Absolutely. I mean, that San Jose is chaos, right? They were chaos with their outgoing coach and their chaos with their interim coach. So, it can't be a 6-pointer again because different conferences, but it's certainly a 3-pointer. And, it's an important game, regardless of whether number 24 is on the pitch. We need some points. And this is a team that on paper we should be mopping the floor with. So, it's time to put up or shut up, I think.
Yeah. Listen, if Lorenzo Insigne were to debut on Saturday, it's a perfect timing for him to do so because they're facing a side that's straight up just not very good. Same with Crescito. You add both those guys into the mix, and hands down, it's a game TFC should getting 3 points at, especially at home. As you guys have already touched on, San Jose is not very good. I think they had 4 winless before they beat Chicago over the weekend, and Chicago's one of the only teams in MLS right now that are worse than San Jose, as TFC saw a couple weeks back at BMO Field when they pulled off the 3-2 come from behind win. So yeah, it's 3 points that I think TFC pretty much have to pick up at this point if they want to continue to be competitive, I guess, throughout the season and make a push towards the playoffs. So it's a big game, massive game.
Yeah, and I think it's also an important one to get 3 points before you go away to the derby match against Montreal, right on the 16th, because you want to go into that game with a bit of confidence. For a team right now, Montreal, yes, I know we beat them in the cup, but let's just that was the B minus team that we played,
and we got spanked by Seattle's kids just
exactly, and they beat Seattle in Seattle during the week. So you really want to go in there with a bit of confidence. You want to go with 3 points in the bag. I know a lot of people are traveling to that game for the away game in Montreal. So you want those supporters going in full voice with 3 points in their pocket, then showing up on a 3-game winless streak again.
100%.
Having lost to arguably the worst team in the league. And I mean, if it does go that route, it's not going to be pretty. I think and this week it was a little surprising to see some of the Bradley out stuff already. But I think you start to maybe hear a little. I know it's ridiculous, Mike. I get that, but it's there. Like I can't ignore it. It's there. It's happening. So definitely those grow louder. Whether it's legitimate or not, they grow louder if you end up losing to San Jose on Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. And obviously, we talked a lot about this being Sydney's potential first game, so we don't have to go too far more into that. Let's get into 3 burning questions here, and let's sort of wrap up the show that way.
Sounds great.
Some of these kind of got answered in your transfer report there, Mike, but I will ask some of them. So the first one comes from @RussianBot 3004 or 3004, as the regular people say it.
OVO.
Exactly. There's my moment. What are the 2 positions of need going into this transfer window? Obviously, Lorenzo is going to come from a creative perspective on the left. We've addressed the left back / center back position with Crescito. Are there 2 other positions that you think TFC need to think about strengthening in this window? Jeff, I'll start with you before we go to Mike.
It's tough because, again, it's such a revolving door of misfit toys playing square peg round hole. My first answer is all positions. But I think, giving it like 2 seconds of thought, I would say our center back corps are pretty thin, our center back core, and a proper fullback. But Crescito sort of answers that need, so I'm going to reserve judgment on that. There's talk about a need for a proper 6 to sort of alleviate Michael Bradley in a double pivot, but there's not enough space in that midfield for all of these 6s and 8s and 10s. So I honestly don't know. I want to see the team. I want to see what Lorenzo brings to the team before addressing that. But knee jerk, yeah, let's get a center back, somebody that can take some minutes away from Shane O'Neill, and maybe complement Mavinga or Salcedo when they're playing.
How many center backs? We already got 4 on the roster. We're talking about a 5th, technically half in Crescito. You want 5.5 center backs on a roster? That's a lot of center backs on a roster.
Yeah, well, we need some capable ones. So yeah,
I'd say Crescito is also a center back too, and that's what Bob Bradley said as well. He's sure he can play left back, but he's also capable of playing in a back 3 on the left side or a left center back in a back 4. So
we are getting spammed by porn bots. This is fabulous. I'm just I am on a regular duty here. Anyway, keep going. I'll handle the getting them out of here.
Yeah. So for me, considering that Bob Bradley, well, first I agree with you, Jeff. There's a lot more than 2 positions that I think this team would love to improve.
Yeah.
But for me, the way that Bob Bradley wants to play, it's a 4-3-3, right? So considering that, I think the main priority should be addressing the right wing spot, because we don't really like DeAndre Kerr. Fine, good young player, and I think he has a really bright future in front of him, especially when you consider he's still growing and he has that physical aspect to his game, and fast as hell. Honestly, his first step is one of the fastest that I've seen, maybe the fastest on this team overall. So DeAndre Kerr doesn't really scream starting right winger to me. So I think that's probably the first one.
Sorry.
First one that we would have to address. The second position, probably ideally for me, would be a right back for Toronto FC. Kosi Thompson, Jaquil are both good young players, but if you want to compete for an MLS Cup, are they necessarily the pieces that you want to be throwing out there every game at right back? Probably not. You'd probably rather supplement them in, and they're both capable of playing other positions than just right back. We saw Jaquil a lot at left back. So those are probably the 2 main ones for me. Third would also be another central midfielder, just to add into the mix, not necessarily a 6, but maybe more of an 8, box-to-box type of midfielder that has the ability to kind of move quickly.
Yeah, I agree. There are more than 2 positions, but if you had to pick 2, to me, it is another holder, another 6. And this is not to discount Michael Bradley, because again, just digging the stats, he's actually been probably one of Toronto FC's best players this year. And I know, again, people love to dig on Michael Bradley. I do still believe that he shouldn't start every single match. But, he's still actually, in a way, this is a season where he's kind of rolling back the clock a little bit.
Absolutely.
In terms of his performances. And if you dig into the stats, he's actually playing quite well from that perspective, considering, a lot of people don't think he should be playing every 90 minutes. That includes me. The other position I agree is a right winger. I think you just need more dynamicism on that right-hand side, whether it's a left footer cutting in, or a right footer that takes it to the byline, which frankly, I don't think we have a lot of or enough of right now. And that speaks to sort of, Mike, what you were saying earlier about the fact that the team's kind of static in the way that they play. Everybody playing to feet, not really trying to get in behind. Those porn bots must be really, really digging.
I am fighting a losing battle here, man. I am just... Yeah.
But anyway, so from that perspective, I think definitely those are the 2 positions that I would look at in terms of positions that we need to look at. Okay, next question.
I agree with you guys.
Yeah, next question. With reinforcements coming to take up starting 11 positions, which TFC youngsters have done enough to continue fighting for 11?
Tale as old as time, this question. Yeah. Yep.
And this is from @Raviadjula. So hopefully Ravi got your name right. Yeah.
Oh, it's a fantastic question, but we keep asking it. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because I certainly have some.
For me, I think right now the players that keep their spots or fight to keep their spots. I know what you just said about Kosi, Mike, but I think Kosi's actually done quite well for a player that's learning a position, playing it for the first time maybe in his life. So that's positive. Ralph Priso, I think, is knocking on the door. I don't think he's replacing Michael Bradley, because I don't think he's a 6. I think he's more of an 8.
Yeah, you think he's an 8. Oh.
Exactly. So definitely Ralph Priso. And I guess out of that young core, you still want to see a little bit of Jaquil Marshall-Rutty, just simply because I don't think he's got enough reps because of the injury. Those are the 3 I would say. I would hesitate to say Jaden Nelson, but with Insigne coming, unless they're going to shift him over to the right at this current moment, he's going to have a bit of a mountain to climb in order to kind of get regular minutes in the team.
We've seen him
Mike,
over at the right before.
Yeah, I know. I just don't know if they'll shift him over there, right? Like, I don't know if that's really what Bob wants to do, or if they're going to be, because if they do bring in Bernardeschi, like, he's not replacing Bernardeschi as a starter on the
Bernardeschi, my favorite player.
Is the question starter or is it playing time?
Yeah, fighting for a starting 11 spot is the question.
The question does say a starting 11 spot. Yeah, so let's stick to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure any one of these guys, if everything went the way TFC wanted it to go, would be starting for the club. I think the one that's made the strongest case is actually probably one that's fighting one of the biggest losing battles in that, and that's Luca Petrasso. Obviously with Crescito and Insigne coming in, that left-hand side's taken up pretty significantly. So, like, I'm not sure what the case is there. Kosey's good. Good young player. He's fine. I think he has a bright future in front of him. But is he really even better than Jahkeele Marshall-Rutty? I think ideally Jahkeele starts in that spot for Bob Bradley. And I'm not sure they would even want to do that if all things went their way. So, yeah, I don't think there's many kids that have a shot or that would have had a shot to stay in the starting 11. I guess we'll see how it sort of plays out.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Mike. If the question is about a starting 11 spot, I'm as brutal as he is. If the question is, as Axis of Evil suggests, although he didn't go for a cheap porn joke like he's been doing or like they've been doing, I keep wanting to gender Axis of Evil. These young players will be dangerous coming off the bench with fresh legs, especially with some experience under their belts. I think that's where we have to sort of focus on these questions now, right? Like we're building a squad. Being a starter is maybe not the goal here. It's being, the fresh legs, the impact subs, the less glory positions, on the team moving forward. And yeah, I think that with reinforcements, you're going to see a lot of their minutes diminished. You've already seen, Chaffel God loaned out to TFC 2 to get some of his minutes because he's already on the outside looking in, coming back from an injury. Well. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of those loans to the B squad for our young starters as the team sort of bloods these reinforcements. So I mean it, that depends. Like, you should always be fighting for a starting spot. I think, as much as I know about internal locker room politics, and these kids have been given a lot of meaningful minutes. So I think they're going to want to keep fighting, but they've also got to know that, if you have designs on left winger, those designs are over. So, they're what I'm worried about is, if they're not getting regular minutes, do they regress back to the mean? And was this all for naught, right? Does Jayden Nelson, with 2 weeks of downtime, not getting starting level minutes, start doing the same, I'm going to take on 3 defenders with my fancy dribbles, as we're trying to sort of beat out of him in terms of habit? I don't want to see that. So yeah, it's tough because you're not going to start them, but they do have to keep seeing minutes with the first team. Otherwise, this incline towards meaningful minutes and experience was sort of just a stopgap. And I don't think the club or the players want this to be seen as a stopgap while they're waiting for, while they're just keeping the spots warm.
Well, we talked about this on the Tunnel Club yesterday. The idea that you, like you just said, Jeff, you're not building necessarily to have all these guys be your starters in the future, right? The idea is they're trying, and from how I see it, this rebuild is about trying to find the guys who are going to be part of a core, right? They're trying to rebuild a core of this team. And they're going to see who of these young guys can fit in and play a role in that core and who doesn't. And you're not keeping all of them. That would be pretty tough. But you find out who are the guys that are going to be a part of this team that we're trying to build going forward. Because we are moving on from the 2015 to 20 core of players. So you're trying to find some of those players. You're trying to find some of those players internally. And then you say, okay, out of the guys that don't seem to make the grade, now where do we go in the market, whether it's trade internally in MLS or finding international players to then fill out the roster that way? I think that's the way you need to go about it. So in terms of starting 11 right now, sure, maybe you guys will be fighting for the odd minute here and there when guys need a rest, as there's going to be a lot of Wednesday coming up in the next little bit. But I mean, I think right now what you're really looking for is who can play a role with this team going forward as a valuable piece off the bench come 2023.
Absolutely.
Which leads into the third and final question. And I'm going to admit the first part here, Robbie, because the club is not actually sitting at the bottom of the table right now, but they're
just feels like it.
Close.
Yeah,
it feels like it. How do we measure success for TFC in the second half of the season? Is it making the playoffs? Is it a Canadian championship? Is it a good run of form that shows promise for next season, even if we miss the playoffs? And that is from @RobbieSarah YYZ, a loyal Tunnel Club listener.
Yeah, great question. Great, and we've been wrestling with it all season.
Yeah. So, Mike, go ahead. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, it's just that we've been kind of wrestling with this all season. For me, it's results are great, but it's also about the football that I watch. I've seen TFC make a lot of progress in the first half of the year, but looking at the standings, they're probably not happy with where they sit, right? So it's that balance of, okay, are they playing good football, but also, yeah, you would like to see them go on a run here and sneak into the postseason. I think they're capable of doing that, and if things kind of work out in the transfer market, then there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do that. But that being said, I think overall, just as I'm thinking through this, taking a step back, I would define this season as success being, is TFC in a better position heading into next off season than they are right now?
But what does that look like to you? Because that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different things. So what does that look like specifically to you?
Well, that's a roster. That's more of a roster thing as well. Looking at the pieces that they've brought into this roster, are these guys for sure pieces that you could see moving forward with this club, or are there still question marks about some of these pieces? Because when we talk about the rebuild, we talk about 18 players leaving this club. I know that there's more that needs to be done in order to kind of get the club to the vision that Bob Bradley wants to get the club to. So
100%.
Are we moving closer to that goal? And that means players that have come in, are they going to be long-term pieces towards next season? Are they going to help TFC next season? Do they look like legitimate MLS players? And not only MLS players, but really good MLS players. Mm-hmm. And do you see that identity being shaped up within the club where, okay, now we're struggling to kind of say exactly what position TFC need? Do we have a clear idea of what exactly that kind of looks like? Right?
Exactly.
For me, that would be successful as long as they're moving towards being a better team that's shaped up to starting 2023 off on a really, really good note. A good note being a contender in 2023.
All right.
Jeff. Yeah. I say this often. I said it, when we were blooding kids last year. The more questions that we answer, the happier I am, right? We've given meaningful minutes across the board to so many question marks. And we keep dancing around, have they been answered or not? The end of the year is a perfect time to close the book on that and say, for better or worse, we have our answers, right? We may, it may not be fair. Life isn't fair. But if we can close the book and have answers on who's coming with me and who isn't, finally and absolutely, like this, yes, that, no. And in addition to Lorenzo being worth the price tag, I think it's a successful season. Just enough of sort of faffing around, for lack of a better word, right? Like, make decisions.
Look at last season. Look at last season. When you ended last season, there were a lot more questions than this team had answers, right?
Yep.
So then when you go through a rebuild like this, you want, as Jeff, you're kind of saying, you want answers. So what I'm trying to say, I guess what I was alluding to and what you're alluding to, Jeff, is that you want more answers at the end of the season being like, these guys are going to be on this team or these guys are not going to be on this team. And you want more people here that are going to be on this team moving forward. Last season, you had like 7 people that you looked at and going to be like, these are going to be players on this team in 2022. I want that number to be 20 by the end of
so fair
of this season, right?
And measured and a proper distillation of things. It can't all happen instantly.
Because we look at the 4-game stretch that I always bring up where TFC kind of provided that false illusion. What if TFC go on to scratch and get into the playoffs because they went on a good run of form? Does that necessarily mean long term that the team is going to be better because of it? No, because it could be just a one and done in the playoffs and kind of paint this sort of false illusion. I'd rather them not make the playoffs and rebuild this team the right way than kind of trying to do anything they can to get into the playoffs, I guess, because we're still in step 1 of the rebuild.
Okay, so I'm going to step back. This is not necessarily how I feel, but this is discourse I've heard out there, right?
Sure.
If that's the case, then put Insigne aside, because I think we discussed that you had to sign Insigne on a free.
Yeah, if you don't get him now, you don't get him. Yeah,
you don't get him, right? But the moves for Crescito, the moves for potentially like a Bernardeschi, maybe a move for like a Junior Hoylett or some senior players like that, right?
Yeah.
Why then worry about doing that now? Because to some fans, that indicates that you're trying to make a move for the playoffs right now.
Well,
so
it's fair.
I'll answer each of those. So Crescito was a package deal with Insigne, right? He came over with.
He wanted his best friend.
Insigne,
yeah.
Right. It helps Insigne with the transition. You bring more leadership into the club, which was much needed. There's a lot of boxes that are checked. You don't use a DP spot in Crescito. He's still a quality player, and it's a 2 or 3 year contract that he signed here with TFC. So he will still be here next season. He also shores up the defense, which they definitely need help at, regardless of what you bring in there. Secondly, Bernardeschi. Bernardeschi's 28 years old. He's one of those pieces that I allude to that'll be part of this team's future if they do get over the line and bring him in. So on a free transfer, you go ahead and you make that move if you're able to do it, just because he's a long-term piece. It's not like he's 35 years old. Third one was Junior Hoylett. If it works out, I imagine it'll be a team-friendly deal, and you're adding a Canadian men's national team player ahead of a World Cup. So commercially, that makes a lot of sense. And also, like, he's a guy who can help the team in a lot of different ways. And
1,000,000%.
A team-friendly deal, so why not make that happen? And he could be someone helping the team, I guess, move forward as well. So, yeah, I think those deals, when you take an actual look at each of them individually, it kind of makes sense why the team would do that. And overall, the team would be better, I think, moving forward with each of those guys on the roster in 2023.
Fair. And I do agree with you in that regard. Look, if they make the playoffs, to me, it's all gravy, right? Because when I look at this roster at the beginning of the year, and Mike, I think you and I talked about it on the Tunnel Club at the beginning of the year when I was in Cuba, like the amount of young players that were coming onto this roster, it's like, if I see progression in each one of those players in some way, in terms of them being full professionals and getting really their first shot at significant minutes, and you can say at the end of the year, like, out of the, we'll call it 7 or 8 young guys that are really getting a shot this year, if 5 of them end up being like, yes, they're pieces that we can keep and we can utilize them in the team in some way, whether it is a starter or off the bench as part of the 18, success, right? Success. Because you now know, okay, we've got this squared away. Now in a targeted way, when we go into the offseason, we know exactly where we need to add senior presence to the team, and
we have more money to spend,
and
because we've got those sweet homegrown contracts.
Exactly, right? And from that perspective, you kind of look at it as the way that they went from the 2015 into 2016 season, where you're now looking to add those vets that can get you over the top, whether they're MLS experience, which I still believe that this team needs,
absolutely,
or they're international players, right? So to me, that's success. if they go on a run and make the playoffs, it'll be fun as hell, right? Like in 2019, going 13 unbeaten to end the season, that was a lot of fun writing that into the playoffs. And then I don't think anybody in their right mind in 2019 thought this team was a cup final team, right? Like no one really thought this was a cup final team.
No, it was
but they squeaked and they somehow made it. And that maybe speaks a little bit to that false dawn you talked about, Mike. But to me, it's about get these young guys minutes and get them improving so that you know what you're moving forward with the bet. So we're all saying the same thing in a roundabout way.
It has to be. I mean, you buy the ticket, you take the ride. We've given them so many minutes this year. People have been screaming for us to do it for, multiple years. So what is the end result of that? It's checking things off the checklist, right? And
it's giving credence to the amount of money you spent on this academy, because this club has spent a lot of money on that academy.
A ton of money on this academy, absolutely.
Right? So you might as well get some product out of it. Okay, let's wrap it up there, boys. I think we're done.
I can't keep blocking. I block like 40,000
I know
different versions of the same.
Exactly. So let's wrap it up here, gents. Thank you everybody for listening to this week's show. We will be back obviously next Monday, same time, same channel. So definitely listen to that. Follow these guys on Twitter if you're not following them already. I mean, what are you doing if you're not? Follow me if you like. I kind of say
follow Mike. I post shoegaze links most of the time. So.
We'll be back. We'll be back on Monday. Also, the Tunnel Club will be back on Sunday after the San Jose game. So give us a follow at TFC Tunnel Club. Obviously, follow this channel at Toronto Till I Die on Twitter. On behalf of Michael Singh.
Don't visit any of the links in the chat.
Do not, or do if you want to catch a virus, go for it, and just don't message me with anything. On behalf of Michael Singh and Jeffrey B. Nesker, I've been Mike Newell. This has been Toronto Till I Die. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
What a pleasure, guys. Love talking with you. We'll see you next week.
And baby, I'm TFC till I die.